If you're planning a holiday to get away from it all, you might be experiencing that it can be quite difficult to accomplish. Today we'll be focusing on the growth of international travels. I'm Patchari Raksawong and you are watching the live streaming of the iTravel exclusives, whereby you'll find out why you're never alone when it comes to traveling, the realities of travel today. Tourism and air travel have both exploded in the past 2 decades. Let's take a look at why the travel industry has become so much bigger than it used to be. Cheaper air travel means more attractions are reachable by air. Disposable income means more people are having the income to spend on travel. And of course, the internet. In the past, travelers had to carry around books and maps of the places they visited. Nowadays, your mobile phone acts as a library full of up-to-date information. Now in the studio with us, we have Robert Schrader. Now he is a travel blogger from the US and you can read his blog on leaveyourdailyhell.com. We'll be discussing the explosive growth in tourism and how it's going to affect individual travelers. Hello Robert, thank you so much for joining us on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Now we did mention some reasons for this explosive growth in traveling, in tourism, higher disposable income. Also, it's a lot cheaper to get around these days, isn't it?
Right.
And a lot more people are having access to the internet, going online. Would you agree with these main reasons?
I do. I think that all of those reasons are individually important, but I think underlying all of them is a desire for escapism. Whether that's because of the political climate in various countries or the tendency of the millennial generation to just want to be somewhere else. I think there are larger forces at play, and these individual tangible reasons are just building off of those. Yeah.
What's the role of the internet, do you think, in sort of increasing the number of travelers out there?
Well, I think the internet does a few things. Number one, it makes information a lot easier to find, right? And I think with the escapism that I talked about, whereas in the past you might have to be at the library, or you have to be near a travel magazine, or you have to have a Lonely Planet guidebook handy, you can be bored at work and depressed reading about the political news, and then you can pull out your phone and you can Google 2 weeks in Thailand, and you can be picturing yourself on a beach in Krabi province. So I think that that's the most important, is information dissemination. It makes information a lot easier to find, but kind of tying in as well with the disposable income piece and the low-cost airlines, you can also very quickly book travel now. So it's not a matter of just dreaming about it and wanting it. You know, if you have a few $100s in your bank account, you can go book a flight from Bangkok to Chiang Mai and you can have a weekend getaway in a few seconds.
The good news of this growth is mainly being realized by developing countries who are struggling to build their economies. They've recognized that they can provide a way to boost tourism in that area. For instance, tourism in Thailand accounts for 10% of the country's GDP. Tourism also helps in less tangible ways. Travelers who have had a good experience in a foreign country will be more open to understanding that people all over the world are not that much different after all. That can only be a good thing. Now, Myanmar has opened its doors to tourism and they're seeing a lot of benefits from that. We're seeing infrastructure being enhanced, being developed, and that's bringing a lot of income into the country. Now, if North Korea could take that direction, I'm sure they'll be happy with the income too, no?
Well, I think when you look at all of these tangible benefits of tourism, whether you're talking about infrastructure development, citizens getting new jobs and making more money, all of these things are very important. But I think the most important thing about tourism, particularly when you're talking about nations that were formerly pariahs, such as Myanmar, or that are currently pariahs like North Korea, is that it is a cultural exchange, right? The people who are going into these countries, they realize that they're basically the same as the people who are there. The people who are receiving the guests from abroad realize that they are all basically the same. And I think that tourism can play a much larger role. The sum of its parts can be much larger than the parts themselves. It can really end up facilitating world peace, and I'm not being dramatic about that. I think that when people can see that the citizens of a country are more than its government, and that we're all ultimately very much alike, that's what helps the world progress. And I think that because we're in the first period in world history where very soon the majority of people around the world are going to be able to travel internationally, I think we're going to see some amazing developments to this end.
So lots of benefits
Yes,
when
I think
you
so.
focus more on the tourism side of a country. Now let's talk about the stakeholders or the companies in the tourism industry. What can they do? What role can they play to guarantee a good travel experience?
Well, I don't think they can guarantee a good travel experience, but I think what they can do, number one, is provide a lot of great and updated information. Is that sometimes tourism websites, official tourism websites, have inaccurate information or information that's not up to date. And of course, if you have the wrong information, you can't have a good time. You can't get to your destination. I think number two, these government tourism organizations can lobby within the government to get money required to develop this infrastructure, to focus on destinations that tourists are going to enjoy. So there's the financial aspect to that as well.
Finally, let's talk about the bad aspects of the increased numbers of travelers in the skies and at major attractions. Increasing delays, long lines at check-ins, and increased security at airports, overbooked resorts and crowded beaches and attractions. And don't forget those first-time travelers who don't know how to behave in foreign countries. All these can turn a holiday into a nightmare. So what can travelers do about it? Let's talk about your personal travel experiences. I'm sure that you've enjoyed traveling around the world here and there. I'm sure you've also stumbled on some issues, some problems as well as a traveler. Can you give us some examples of what you ran into traveling here and there?
Oh God, that's a really good question.
Some bad experiences that you've had?
Well, I want to be diplomatic, but interestingly enough, talking about the question before this, what tourism boards can do and what sometimes they do that makes it harder for travelers. I was in Malaysia in February.
Okay.
I was in a place called Semporna, which is on the eastern tip of Borneo. And I really wanted to hike up to this viewpoint over an island called Bohi Dulang. It's one of the most beautiful views. And that was the entire reason that I flew there from Kota Kinabalu. And on the official Sabah tourism website, it made it seem like this was very doable in a day. There were no asterisks, there were no terms and conditions. It's you turn up. Well, I got there, and all of a sudden, the man who is at the entrance to the hiking trail says, "Nope, we had rain yesterday. It's too dangerous. You can't go." And I said, "Well, I have travel insurance. I am a relatively fit and smart person. I think I'll know if I need to turn back." And anyway, so I wasn't able to do this. I flew there from Kota Kinabalu. I took a taxi for an hour. I took a boat for 2 hours to get there, and then I couldn't end up doing it. So I went to the Sabah tourism office after that, and I did kind of lightly scold them, and I said, "You really need to have this information on your website because as it is, this part of Sabah isn't very visited by non-Malays. But it could be. It has a lot of tourism potential."
Now, it's really, really important to have this habit of being really realistic about your destination, isn't it? And also to have that sense of humor, to really enjoy yourself, no?
Yes, it's very important. Yeah.
So, do you have an experience that really tested your sanity? Like
Yeah, I did. So recently I was in Western China in the city of Chongqing. I wrote about it on my website. And what's funny about this city is that it is one of the largest cities in the world by population. According to some numbers, the very largest city. But locally, it's known as the world's largest village because the sensibility of people there is still very provincial. Up until 20 years ago, it was,
in
just
Chongqing,
a countryside area. Yeah.
Okay.
So a lot of these people haven't been city people very long. And one of the things that I noticed is that a lot of times you'll get in a taxi and you'll be going to your destination, and somewhere along your journey, the driver will just stop and let someone else into the car.
What?
And the first time this happened to me, I got really annoyed because I was,
Weren't you a bit fearful? It's like, excuse me.
Well, I wasn't necessarily fearful because, I'm bigger than most Chinese people. But I was very put off because I was like, I'm paying for a private journey. This is not a bus.
Right.
But eventually, you just realize that this is just going to happen.
And it's just part of their culture.
It's just part of their culture. It's just part of the way they are. And I find that so many times our frustration during travel is because of our refusal to accept culture and behavior for what it is. And I think that sometimes when you let go of your expectations, and you can kind of laugh at fate and life,
right.
that's when you really become a traveler and not a tourist.
Thank you so very much, Robert, for being on the show, for sharing with us your insight and your travel experiences. Really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you very much.
Now, there is a lot of wisdom to that phrase, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. So when you're traveling, be sure that you're respectful of their culture and way of life, because I'm sure it's going to make your travel experience a whole lot more pleasant, enjoyable, and easier as well. Now, we do hope you have enjoyed this edition of iTravel Exclusives. Make sure you bookmark this channel, as we will be back with views and opinions regarding traveling around the world. And that is Wednesday, 9 p.m. GMT from Bangkok, Thailand. We'll be seeing you again, and don't forget, leave your comments below. Bye for now.